So this right here is a Su-30 killer, otherwise known as the Ukrainian Magura-7 drone boat that shot down at least one, maybe two Russian fighter jets last week. And today we've got more details of that operation from the Ukrainian perspective, and then from the Russian side, what they're doing to try to take back control of the Black Sea. Now, starting out, we've got an article here from the War Zone where they had an interview with the Ukrainian head of the Defense Intelligence Directorate, Lieutenant General Kirill Budanov. They say Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate shot down two Su-30 flanker multi-role fighters with AIM-9 Sidewinder infrared guided air-to-air missiles fired by Magura-7 drone boats. That's a whole mouthful there. These are U.S. made. A bunch of our allies have these as well, these AIM-9 Sidewinders. We had kind of sent them with the anticipation that they were probably going to be used attached to Ukrainian aircraft to shoot down maybe drones, missiles, maybe even Russian jets. Ukraine has found a way to attach those to unmanned surface vessels. They're Magura drones and are effectively shooting down Russian aircraft. They say this marks the first time fighter aircraft have been downed by drone boats and the first use of the AIM-9 from a drone boat for a kill. Quote, "It's a historical moment," according to Budanov, who said there were no videos or images of the second engagement, and we do have videos of the first that will play throughout this video here. The second, there's just been speculation. It sounds like there might have been confirmation from the Russian side, but even in this War Zone interview, the editors go out of the way to say, hey, we can't independently confirm that this second aircraft was shot down. So definitely one, maybe two. Now, according to Budanov, he says the GUR used three Magura-7 drone boats in the attack, with two of them firing on the jets. He said the Magura-7 is the air defense variant of the Magura-5, but he did not elaborate any further on that. And we've seen a couple different varieties of this drone boat so far. I don't have the exact naming down for each one, but kind of the baseline model has explosive charges in the hull, and it rams. It's a torpedo of sorts. And we've seen that used very effectively against Russian ships in the Black Sea, where it just rams into the side of the vessel, detonates, and can cause a lot of damage. We've also seen some outfitted with machine guns, some with surface-to-surface rockets, unguided rockets, others, I believe, with a guided version of those surface-to-surface rockets. And now we're starting to see more air defense assets. So I guess these AIM-9s, I've referred to them in the past as surface-to-air missiles. Technically, they're air-to-air missiles being fired from the surface of the water. We'll go with that. But nonetheless, this Magura-7 is the air defense variant. And as I showed at the beginning of the video, we're actually starting to see some pictures and videos of what that looks like in use. Now, Budanov said the crew of the first Su-30 survived and was picked up in the Black Sea by a civilian ship. Preliminary reports say the crew of the second jet was killed. And we do have confirmation of that first crew being picked up through a series of different Russian mill bloggers explaining the conditions that those crew members were located and rescued by Russian civilians. He says in December, Ukraine claimed it used an R-73 from an uncrewed surface vessel to down a Russian Mi-8 helicopter over the Black Sea. We do have footage of that as well. I'll go ahead and play that. And following that engagement, the GUR began installing these AIM-9 Sidewinders on boats. He said, we've used a couple different versions of missiles, but the best results come from the AIM-9. And I feel like this is probably lost in everything here. As soon as we say it out loud, it's like, oh yeah, of course. There is constant testing going on with all of these different variants. It's not as simple as just throw a missile on there and go out and start operating. They're testing these nonstop to find out, can it actually fire? Can it identify and lock onto a target while it's out in choppy water? What is the range? Is the range impacted? Like, all of this stuff has to be tested to some degree before it's put into action. So as Ukraine doesn't tip their hand to Russia before they're out there actually operating. And again, right now it looks like through all of those tests, the U.S. AIM-9 Sidewinder is the preferred munition. This goes back like the 1980s. This is not a new munition by the United States. But nonetheless, we do have some information here from Russia as well as to how they're trying to mitigate this new threat posed to their aircraft over the Black Sea. But before diving into that, a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, Delete Me. So I'm going to be honest, this one kind of pissed me off. I don't know, it feels like it hit close to home, like maybe they got me with this before. There's a new story out about how car manufacturers are selling our data to insurance providers who then jack up our insurance rates without us having any idea. I don't know. I feel like that may have happened to me before. Anyways, this new report says Toyota was just accused of selling their customers' data to data brokers and insurance providers without their customers' consent. According to a recent lawsuit, Toyota is tracking drivers' mileage, speed, braking, acceleration, travel direction, use of steering, date and time of driving, and vehicle operation data such as sensor readings, among other data. Everything that they could collect, they're collecting and selling. They say as a result, drivers may see substantial increases to their auto insurance premiums. In some instances, they may have been denied auto insurance altogether. Think about that. So you don't actually get a ticket. You don't get pulled over. Nothing happens. But these companies, through the data that's sold to them through these data brokers, they look at your driving history and say, I know we shouldn't have this, but we do, and we're gonna rate your insurance accordingly. So this is where the sponsor of today's video, Delete Me, comes in. Delete Me is a subscription service that constantly scans the internet, and when they find your personal data available for sale, they have it removed. Now, I personally use Delete Me, and since last February, they've removed 216 listings across 141 different data brokers, which means like every month, there's more and more work to be done. So it is pretty nice that this is just kind of being handled in the background. So if you want to protect yourself and your family from these data brokers, get started with Delete Me today, link in the description below, and use code Preston for 20% off all consumer plans. And now, back to the video. All right, so starting now with a couple of different Russian mill bloggers here. The first one, Kitten Telegram, which is quite the name, said, quote, the enemy boasts that it destroyed another aircraft allegedly in Crimea. The first was a Su-30 loss after the enemy successfully used a naval unmanned aerial vehicle with missile weapons. Even without this fact, one can state 3 sad points that indicate, but to put it mildly, problems in our military organization in the 4th year of the special military operation. 1, the enemy has seized the initiative in the Black Sea waters. That's something. 2, the Black Sea Fleet, after losing its flagship and a number of ships, has still not been restored in terms of combat capability. The fleet, or what remains, is huddled in harbors and bays. 3, the enemy has an overwhelming advantage in the use of unmanned boats with the ability to attack in any part of the water and keep the Russian Federation coast and adjacent airspace under control. Look, I have a hard time disputing any one of those. When you're talking about the initiative in the Black Sea, yes, Russia still has more naval vessels there than Ukraine, and it's not even close, but they can't operate in the Black Sea at all. Now, it's not like the Russian warships have been replaced with Ukrainian warships, but these Ukrainian USVs have forced the Russian ships to essentially sit in port. They're not being utilized hardly at all. On top of that, there's a very lopsided balance right now in this unmanned surface vessel war. Now, to be fair, Ukraine has a lot of targets they can go after. They're shooting down Russian jets. They're attacking Russian ships. I'm not sure exactly what the comparable Russian use would be for unmanned surface vessels. So the need was there on the Ukrainian side, but we're not seeing anything like this from the Russians right now, which means that they've had to try to come up with some different ways as to how to deal with this. And we got some footage just put out the other day by the Russians showing that they've been engaging these drone boats a couple different ways. First off, from boats, like with people on board shooting at these drones. And look, that can be effective for sure. You get a 50 cal or something, or a Dishka can fire at a pretty significant distance, definitely can disable or destroy one of these unmanned surface vessels, but also a little bit risky, wouldn't you say? I mean, remember some of these versions just have, massive explosive charges in the nose of the vessel. So if you're out there in the water battling with these things, you got to worry about, that, which could be a bit of a problem. So following that issue, we saw Russia start to roll out more helicopters, which in a sense makes a lot of sense. You can kind of hover, go very slow. You have door gunners usually leaning out the side. It's a pretty inexpensive way to identify and destroy these unmanned surface vessels. But then Ukraine started shooting them out of the sky. Again, we've got I say it happened over and it didn't happen a bunch of times. It happened once, but that's all it really took for Russia to say, wait a minute, maybe helicopters are a little too slow moving to effectively engage these drone boats. Let's put some fixed wing aircraft over the Black Sea. And it seemed like those were probably going to be too fast for some of the munitions that we were seeing on these USVs. And clearly, as of last week, that's not the case at all. So now Russia is going to have a hard time using surface vessels to destroy these things. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft are all being shot down, which leads us to what appears to be the next phase for defense against these USVs, drones. And of course, the answer is drones, right? It seems like the answer to everything in this and probably future conflicts is drones. Two majors says, quote, against the backdrop of yesterday's attack and the loss of the Su-30, so this is a report from a couple days ago, questions are being asked about how to solve the problem of a coastal defense without having to send planes to fire cannons at it like in World War II. The answer is simple. Look at the land theater of operation and the revolution of UAVs, which we wrote about back in early January. Unmanned aircraft are capable of solving the same problems at sea and in conditions of lesser opposition. He suggested using the combination that they've been using on land of Zala reconnaissance UAVs with the Lancet loitering munitions. So a recon drone up there at a higher elevation, when it spots an actual target, a loiter munition is launched and zeroes in and the Zala can actually laze for the Lancet to identify and mark the target. He says, unlike the front lines where they're hunted by interceptors and radars, there's nothing like that over the Black Sea, suggesting that, hey, it's kind of free hunting, be a lot easier hunting, harder in the sense of trying to identify these boats, but they are on the surface of the water, so you probably could identify them at a pretty significant distance. And we've actually started to see this put into use by, of all groups, the Russian Espanola PMC, or private military company. This is a group that was formed out of a group of soccer hooligans, of all things. They're the 88th Brigade, I believe, as they fall under the Russian military. Back when the Wagner revolt happened and they marched on Moscow, following that, Russia disbanded all the PMCs and rolled them up into Redoubt PMC, which is owned by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Espanola is one of those groups, so they have a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. They are a part of the Russian military now. They have primarily been operating in and around Chasiv Yar, and they're still there today. But just in the course of the last couple weeks, we've seen them start to talk more and more about this Marine detachment that they've sent down to defend Crimea. And they've put out a handful of videos and done some interviews with their commander down there on the scene. It's not clear how many people Espanola has sent for this mission, but they're utilizing drones and FPVs to engage and probably destroy some of these Ukrainian drone boats. I don't know if this is a 5-man team, a 10-man team. It's pretty safe to say that the majority of Espanola is still operating up around Chasiv Yar, but it is kind of interesting when you think about it. I mean, they've talked about running some drone schools of their own, but I'm not entirely sure why a special detachment from this one unit needed to be pulled out of Chasiv Yar and pushed down to Crimea. It seems like drone experience just is probably widespread across the entire Russian military. I haven't noticed that this specific group in Chasiv Yar is like levels above anyone else. But nonetheless, this is the group right now in Crimea actually using FPV drones to try to defend against the Ukrainian drone boats. But again, rather new tactics rolling out. You're seeing both sides kind of adapt as best they can. And right now, as the Russian Telegram channel put it, I think it's pretty safe to say that Ukraine does have the initiative in the Black Sea with these new versions of USVs rolling out left and right. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.